Welcome to the Microdosing for Healing podcast. I'm your host, Casey Garrett, and together we'll be discovering and learning from inspiring voices of healers, medicine keepers, and visionaries. Every episode, we'll explore the world of health, vibrant wellness, and natural medicine for a new era of human society. Welcome to today's episode. All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us today. So today, to introduce these three lovely bright lights that I have with me today, I wanted to share three of the overarching themes that I have seen in applicants in my intake process for our Microdosing for Healing program over the last 4 years. I can't tell you how many people touch one of these three themes as one of the founding reasons of bringing them to mushroom practice. The first is they share something to the effect of, I'm okay. Like, I'm okay, I'm good. But somewhere along the way, I lost my spark in life. I lost a sense of wonder, joy, positive, my limitless exuberance of what life could hold for me. And I want to get that back again. I've lost my sense of joy. The second one is I have this secret closeted creative streak to me that I am not expressing. I used to have it fully alive and vibrant as a kid. And similarly, over time, I've been in this job that I don't get to exercise that part of myself, but I kind of miss that side of myself that writes poetry on the side or that plays music or that dances or does design work. And how do I recapture and harness that sense of creative spark that I once felt? The third theme that I hear a lot is relational. People feel so disconnected from themselves, from each other. They're like, I feel distant and apart from my kids, from my parents. And so they're hoping to heal and find that love connection with their relationships to other and self again. So I thought it'd be super fun to bring three of the world leading experts on these three topics, which are joy, creativity, and love with my three guests today, and talk about how we can rediscover these things, reawaken these qualities in our life for our own self, but also to bring more of these qualities to our communities and world around us. So please welcome Lisa McCourt, Jacob Nordby, and Scott Stabile. Thank you all so much for being here with me today. Lisa, let's start with you if we can. So Lisa McCourt is the founder of Joy School, host of Do Joy podcast, and author of Free Your Joy. She has written many, many books about joy and love and has sold over 9 million copies in the decades that she's been devoted to the business of generating more love and joy in the world. So Lisa, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. What for you, where did this start for you? How did you decide to dedicate and devote yourself to this really beautiful quality?
Oh my goodness. First of all, thank you for gathering. This is like my A-team heart family. So I'm just so feeling squishy hearted to be here with y'all. Thank you for the invitation. Yeah, I think for most of us in this weird business that who even told us this could be a business, I think it's always born of contrast, right? If you go through life just being a happy-go-lucky, always filled with joy person, you don't even know that it's a thing that deserves an art form and a skill set and something to dedicate your life to studying and ever improving and gaining the little toolbox for. So, definitely it came from a really dark prior existence before finding the tools and learning how to apply the tools. It's so funny. I was thinking about Jacob earlier. We've, been in teaching capacities before in similar places. And Jacob has this tool where he'll say, think back to, when you were a child and you were free and you were unencumbered and, the world was your oyster and you could do, and I'm always like, whose childhood is that? For me personally, it's like, I've never felt more free and unencumbered than I do today. I wouldn't want to backtrack by like 5 minutes into any prior iteration of my life experience. So I think that it's just born out of, needing the tools for survival and finding out where to get them and just building that toolbox from there.
Thank you. That is so, so inspiring, because I think so many people see someone who is happy and joyful and they think they were born that way. Right. Can you share some of the pivotal things that you learned along the way that really shifted that for you?
Some people are born that way. I think that, we come here with a mixed bag of what we bring in and what we sign on for with the experiences that we, sort of like contract on when we come here. And for me, I've always admired my fellow teachers who have that dark night of the soul, pivotal moment. Byron Katie saw the cockroach under the bed. Some of these stories are like so dramatic and powerful and beautiful. And it really has been a series of micro awakenings for me. It's almost always been through books and teachers, which is why I'm so passionate about writing and teaching, because it's like, that's what did it for me. And it was increment by increment. I was a big, TM person in my early 20s, and that kind of kicked it all off. And it's been a series of powerful micro awakenings along the way.
Thank you.
Did you say what was like the top tool?
Yeah. If you have any tools that have been really meaningful to you to share.
There are a host of tools, but the crux of it really is about understanding that we have the power to let go. It's that let go that is just a practiced thing that nobody teaches us in regular life. So it's having the emotions and knowing how to hold them in their fullness enough to give them the space to move through us, in a nutshell.
Beautifully said. Amen to that. Yes. Jacob, let's shift over to you. So Jacob is the author of The Divine Arsonist, Blessed Are the Weird, best title ever, and The Creative Cure. He's a passionate researcher and teacher of creativity, healing, and human potential, the co-founder of the Institute for Creative Living Foundation and a writing room community with Anne Lamott and others. He loves to invite others into lives of joy and healthy creative expression on all levels. Thanks for being here, Jacob.
I love being here with you and my other two good friends.
Thank you. So for people who come, as I describe, who say, I was creative once upon a time, my creativity has lain dormant for some time, what do you say to them?
It's so interesting. When I wrote Blessed Are the Weird, people came out of the closet, saying, yes, that's me. And there were so many other people who said, I don't think I don't think I'm weird enough, but I want to be creative. And that really sent me on a search to go, what is it that's holding us back from seeing ourselves as creative? And I see this as the divine energy, the spark of life that is what we start with when we get here. And I feel strongly that it is not something that gets damaged or goes away. I feel that we damage the connection to it. It gets filled with static. So a lot of people, when they realize I haven't ever hurt this thing and there's a way back, I can develop practices. And I love what Lisa said about micro choices, micro awakenings. There's a way to just take one step at a time back into a fuller experience of that. And I love helping people find how simple it is, because in many people's minds, it's like, my life has passed me by. I'm 65. I no longer have time to even, learn how to sing or write or whatever it is. And when we help them understand that what we're talking about is really, it's like the sap in a tree or blood in our veins. It's meant to flow through everything. So how can I bring that awareness, that aliveness into all the different parts of my life? I think our culture has creativity so boxed in as a product. If your product does well, then you're creative. And the answer is, as far as I'm concerned, that's heresy. We are all creative, and that's our innate nature.
Beautifully said. Thank you. Scott, let's shift over to you. I loved reading about you and your background as a love activist. It's so great. So Scott is the author of Enough as You Are and Big Love, The Power of Living with a Wide Open Heart. He's a passionate love activist who believes there is no force more powerful than love to create real connection and healing in our world. Scott guides transformational breathwork journeys and leads personal empowerment workshops nationally and internationally. Thank you, Scott, for being here. So relationships come up so often, so often in my work and what leads people to approach healing. Why do you think in a time, coming off of the pandemic years where, the world kind of brought us all closer together in some ways, but in other ways, it took us farther apart from each other. How do you see where we are in this modern moment of how we can best heal and bring more love into our lives?
That's a great question. Hi, Casey. I'm so happy to be with y'all. I love Jacob and Lisa so much. And I'm delighted to meet you, Casey. So, for me, the first thing that comes up with your question is more self-love. Right. I really think that how we're showing up with others it's always in relation to how we're showing up for ourselves, which is to say, if you want to be more loving with the people in your life or with strangers in your life, how are you with yourself? Are you loving yourself? Are you showing compassion to yourself? Are you being kind? Because all of these things transcend self. They always do. If you look around at a world where people are screaming at each other, I'm never looking at these screaming people as people who are in good relationship with themselves. That's not what's happening. So for me, there's always benefit in starting at home, starting where you are. And Lisa and Jacob both said really important things in relation to that journey. Lisa was talking about how where she is now, she wouldn't trade it for the world. And what I love so much about that is understanding that it's never too late to transform your life and transform how you connect to yourself and your experience of the world. And then Jacob was talking about that divine spark, which is our creativity, but it's also our love. It's also the peacefulness that is alive within us, and understanding that it isn't about fixing. It's, for me, always about remembering, right? Peeling away all the different layers that pile on top of the love and the peace that we are at our core. And the more we do that work, or play, however you want to title it, whatever's going to energize you to do it, the more we come in touch with who we are at our essence, which is this profoundly loving, profoundly peaceful, profoundly creative, joyful human being. And the more in touch we are with that energy, the more we're naturally going to be emitting it. So yeah, we're all seeing a world where people are at war and screaming and hateful. And what I come back to for myself when I'm seeing that, whether I'm viewing this world as imploding or flourishing, I ask myself, no matter what you're seeing out there, who do you want to be in the face of it? What example do you want to set in the face of it? And for me, the answer is always more love, more compassion, more joy, more of all of this good stuff. Live in it as much as you can, be an example of it as much as you can, and trust that by doing so, you are actually impacting the world in a positive way.
Beautifully said. Thank you. Lisa, question for you. One of the things I'm so excited about now, and I've been in the healing arts and wellness world for very many years, and lately in the last few years, I've really noticed a diversity and breadth of the people that are really stepping into this work. It used to be kind of like a sliver of our society, right? Who was doing spiritual work and personal development work or healing work. And now it's broad. I have people of all backgrounds and all ages coming to it, which is so exciting. But I still have a lot of people who are like, I'm really busy. I don't really have time, I don't really have time to meditate and do spiritual work. Can you speak to the value, of setting aside time and space in your life to cultivate joy, to cultivate your spiritual connection and your connection to yourself? Like, what's the ROI on doing these things, right?
That's exactly it, is that people don't recognize the ROI. And Scott just spoke beautifully to it. When we do our self-love work, our own, whatever we're doing to elevate our own consciousness, it ripples out to everyone around us, not just even our nearest and dearest, but everybody that they interact with. And every spiritual guru has said, if you want to change the world, you start with, changing what's within. And I think that's a little airy-fairy for people, and they want like more, statistics, but the statistics are there. Happier people live longer, they're healthier, they have better relationships and marriages, if that's what they want. They make more money. Happy people do have an ROI all across the board. And it's when it's an authentic happiness. I think a lot of us are really, really good at inauthentic happiness. That's part of what we, learn here. It's part of how we're pleasing to others, is by pasting on the smile or seeming to be, okay with things that we're not really okay with. But that's not sending out an energetic frequency that's going to up-level all that other stuff in your life. It has to be that really deep down, this is me, all of me, being who I be, and being happy with that. And that's when everything out there starts to rearrange itself. We always say in Joy School, it's a parallel path, right? It's like we work on our internal landscape, but that's not enough for, most people to want to come in. They want to know how, my happiness is going to happen when I get that thing over there, and that job and that money and that partner and that home. So it's like, yeah, that's one of the paths too, but it's not the primary one, right? It's like getting this solid in here is what makes it all pretty effortless to get everything out there, kind of however you want it to be.
Absolutely. Yes. Jacob, one of the qualities I love in you so much is you're absolutely ace at bringing people together and igniting people's qualities of creativity in that connection process and community process. I have found and witnessed, creativity is contagious. Even if we have different expressions, just being in the company of someone in doing their thing, doing their creative passion, it ignites our own creativity. So can you talk about the power of community and creativity and how that's manifested in your own communities?
I was looking for this quotation by Joseph Campbell, where he says, we're not on a journey to save the world, but to save ourselves. But in doing that, you save the world. The influence of a vital person vitalizes. And I know how I feel when I come into connection with, all three of you today. My vibration, everything else. And that's simply by being in your presence. I don't think we can overestimate the deep need for human connection right now. And I don't think it has to be overly prescribed or, some grand program. I think simply being together and talking and sharing food and creating things together, whether that's music or conversation, I think it is so vital. We make these things way too complicated. It's as simple as taking a walk sometimes with 2 or 3 friends. I don't know if I answered your question.
Mm-hmm. No, beautiful. Can you share a little bit, like, in your community? I know you have a lot of writers in your community. And have you noticed that writers being in the company of other writers impacts them in their process?
Oh my God, yes. In fact, what's so fascinating is that there's this myth of writers, I think creatives in general, but I think writers have a very special psychosis that says, I am supposed to go up into my attic and create this thing through miserable years, and probably rats are biting me. And then when it happens, I'm going to bring out this work of great genius. And they fail to realize that all the great writers we know, we're hanging out with other great writers. And it was the connection, it was the magnification effect that happened. So yes, completely agree with that.
That's it. Exactly. Yes, that's so true. So true of writers. Oh, thank you. Scott, so when it comes to cultivating love and self-love and compassion, I remember I was in a workshop with a teacher once, and It was a group experience, and we were given hand mirrors, and we were supposed to look into the hand mirror and express love to ourselves. And it was so awkward and it was so uncomfortable. I was looking around at the group, and can you talk about how in real life, aside from like loving ourselves into a mirror, how people can start to cultivate? I mean, I see this so much in the people I work with. They're so hard on themselves. They're so self-critical, and they are like their worst, harshest critic. And so a lot of my work with people is to really see themselves as the way I see them, and the people who love them see them. And there's always so much dissonance between those things. So can you talk about, when you work with people and you cultivate love and self-love, how this happens in real life and real practice?
Yeah, I mean, to your example with the mirror, what I would say to that, because it kind of elicits affirmations, or the idea of affirmations for me. And my approach with affirmations in general is understanding that the things that we're speaking don't carry as much weight as what we're actually feeling and vibrating energetically. So I think affirmations can be a really powerful tool, but if what I'm saying to myself is, I love myself completely, but the truth is I'm vibrating in this energy that is actually self-loathing, that energy is going to trump whatever words I'm speaking into a mirror. So what I encourage people to do is come up with the most honest statement that you can make that is also a positive statement. So if you can't honestly say, I love myself completely right now, can you honestly say, I am willing to love myself like I've never loved myself before? That's a very positive statement. It's an active statement, and it also reflects self-love. Even the willingness on its own carries the energy of love. And then you're not creating any sort of dissonance between what you're saying and what you're feeling. You're actually harmonizing those energies. And for me, that's very powerful. Right. That's what Lisa was speaking to. And she was saying what we're vibrating, like speak the truest thing that you're vibrating that is also in the umbrella of serving you positively. And then look in the mirror and say those things, and you'll probably have a different experience. And also, I think that one of the things that we don't do often, Casey, is we don't give ourselves a credit. We don't acknowledge the times that we are showing up for ourselves in a loving way. And I bring this up to people all the time. We take for granted, when you're brushing your teeth, you're loving yourself. When you're preparing yourself a meal, you're loving yourself. When you're putting on clothes that make you feel good, you're actually loving yourself. I meet a lot of people who say to me, I have no idea how to love myself. And yet they're doing many things throughout the day that actually reflect self-love. So what I'd like to invite us all to do is to spend a little more time acknowledging it. Even if it's 5 seconds, this is me right now brushing my teeth, taking care of myself in a loving way. Like, how does that shift how you move through the day if 20, 30, 40 times throughout a day, you've carved out 5, 10, 30 seconds where you're actually just resting in self-love? What that does, one, is it's 20 seconds that you're not living in a self-abusive, self-loathing mind. And also, because everything here is energy, those choices create momentum. Energy builds on energy. And suddenly you find yourself more naturally living in these moments of self-appreciation and self-love. Another thing I would recommend that was suggested in a hypnosis workshop I took many years ago. And I only remember this one thing about that workshop, but I've done this a lot, and it's been effective, and I recommend it a lot, is that inner critic, because what you described, Casey, is the reality for most of us. We're all our harshest judge. We all have self-abusive minds, where our minds are all expert at tearing us down. So that voice, that inner critic, what happens if you actually give it a voice? And not just any voice, but the most ridiculous voice you could possibly imagine giving your inner critic. So my inner critic now sounds like this: Scott, you're really stupid and lazy, and you're not doing it right, and you're ugly. And when that is the voice speaking to you, it's really hard to take that seriously. And what's important about that is that it's just breaking the energy in the moment. It's taking this self-abusive, heavy energy and interrupting it with something silly, and also reminding us by doing so that so much of what our mind is saying to us, it's just lies. And we have been trained to believe the communication of our minds instead of trained to challenge it, not from a warlike place. Don't go to war with it, but understand that much of what your mind is feeding you is untrue. And if someone was standing in front of you, spitting all these lies at you, you're not likely to listen to them with the same regard that we give our minds when it's lying to us about who we are and what we're capable of. So those are a few things I offer up.
Absolutely gorgeous examples. Thank you so much. Lisa, this one's perfect for you. So we live in a special moment, as we have talked about many times. There is lots of noise, and our mainstream media just loves the clickbait, loves the negativity, loves the drama, loves the dampen joy at every turn. How do we maintain a high joy set point, if you will, when we also want to be really engaged in the world and interact in the world? It's one thing to kind of keep our set point fine when we're at home and having breakfast, but it's another thing to kind of take that joy to the world. So I'd love to hear what you do, some personal practices you have when you're kind of out in the world to kind of keep your joy set point high.
Thank you, love. Yes. And it's going to be different for everybody, right? Everybody, you have to find your threshold. Most people will say, avoid the news, don't buy into it, don't go there. One of my joy schoolers actually uses it as a practice. Like, she on purpose listens to everything because she wants to practice that recognition that I source my well-being from within, and nothing out here is going to affect me. And that's a practice. And when we do get more and more practiced at the understanding that we source all of our well-being from within, it gets easier to know where to draw that threshold. And a lot of people do find an outlet in some form of activism or going out and saving the world. But we have to be very careful when we do that we're not buying into the suffering, buying into the problem, because we can actually make a situation worse if we're just there adding our voice and our complaint to the problem. So with people who want to go out and change the world, that it really requires that inner fortress of knowing that I am going to be bringing positivity to this. I'm going to be bringing light to this. And it sounds almost callous, but you have to have an acceptance. You have to build the capacity to hold it all. You have to recognize that human beings have been at war since the beginning of humankind. This is not something that, I chose to be here now at this place and time in the course of humanity when human beings are going to be at war. There are going to be people killing people unjustly on the planet right here where I am, because this is the time and positioning in humanity that I came in. And maybe through my light and my desire to push humanity in a forward moving, positive direction, maybe I can help to contribute to this. And if I can and keep my vibration high while I'm contributing to it, then I'm happy with myself at the end of the day. If you're just buying into it or really railing against it shouldn't be this way, you're going to possibly add to the problem more than you're addressing the problem, is what I've come to recognize.
Well said. Thank you. Absolutely. So, Jacob, the topic I would love to share on. So I have really noticed in the last couple of years, coming out of the pandemic years, I kind of check myself by looking over the past couple of days and noticing how many times I've laughed as a measure of how am I doing, right? And how is my happiness, joy, and creativity, honestly. So one of the things I've seen you implement so beautifully in your work is humor. You are one of my favorite follows for that reason. I can be having a thing and I just have to go to Jacob's feed. It's usually makes me smile or crack up. So I'd love to hear the interplay between humor and creativity. I do think there's a link between those things, and how humor plays in your life.
So now we're talking about this Venn diagram that crosses over very much into breath work and self-love. It crosses over to joy. I grew up in a large family, and we are ridiculous when we get together. There is so much laughter. It is nonstop. It's probably too much, honestly, for most people. And so we love laughing together. And what I've noticed is, Scott, it's almost like breath work. Laughter has the ability to activate our, polyvagal, get us down into a good zone, as long as it's kind laughter. If we're not laughing at someone in a mean way, when we're laughing together, we're releasing shame. That's one of the side benefits of it, is that it helps us acknowledge our mutual weirdness and flaws and we still get to accept ourselves and each other in the middle of all that. And I think that's it's among the primary socialization things that keeps us from this more relaxed, innocent experience of life and each other and ourselves and whatever we call creativity. Is a sense that we have to be doing it all right, and we have to hide our imperfections from each other so carefully. We have to build up this image and then guard it at all costs. And the spiritual teachers, and a lot of those are people who you would never call themselves spiritual teachers. For me, a lot of the spiritual teachers I love to be near are people who laugh so much, and they don't take themselves too seriously, and they remind themselves through laughter and through just connection like that, they remind themselves and all of us that it's going to be okay. And I think we need to hear that message over and over and over again every day. It's going to be okay. Gorgeous.
Thank you. Scott.
I feel like we're on the Hollywood Square.
I think I'm just excited to hear your answers before I even ask the question. So my next question for you, and I could picture certain people smiling at this question already, is, some people are very, very, very easy to love. We all have them in our lives. And then all of us have people in our lives who are a little bit more challenging to love. So can you talk to that a bit of how can we work with people, especially when they are family members, that were baked into this lifetime with us, of how we can bring more love, bring more healing into kind of our more challenged relationships in our lives?
Yeah, well, the word that just was going across the screen for me is just boundaries, boundaries, boundaries when it comes to people we find challenging to be in relationship with. I think that in my experience, the more we come into love of self, the more we recognize that we are inherently worthy, that our worth is not predicated on achievement or looks or social status or anything other than we were born worthy, we will die worthy. The more we grow in respect of ourselves, we naturally stop allowing into our lives the same types of interactions, the same types of disrespect, the same types of boundary trampling. And so we're more inclined to get clear about what it is we will accept and will not accept. And if in that clarity, we can have the courage to not only state, hey, within the context of this relationship, this is not working for me. I am not willing to relate to you in this way any longer. And for us to move forward as we are, something's going to need to shift. And then not only to state that, but to actually have the courage to enforce it. It's hard enough. I mean, we're all, especially those of us, people are terrible with boundaries, and nice people are the worst with boundaries, right? We don't want to be seen as difficult. Jacob's raising his hand, but he's not that nice. Anyway, I love you, brother. We tend to struggle. We feel like prima donnas. We feel like we're being difficult. We feel like we're afraid of being judged by others for setting our boundaries. But the beauty of that is we're judged by others no matter what we do. So when you really come to understand no matter what you do, you're going to be judged, that can be a very liberating truth. And so to be in relation with those who are difficult, you have to really ask yourself, if it's not somebody that you feel like you are ready to walk away from in your life, if this is a person you feel like you're going to stay in contact with, get really honest and really clear with yourself and ask yourself, how can I go about setting boundaries that might create a better relationship here? What things can I do that might allow for this relationship to feel a little bit more peaceful, knowing that we have zero control over how others are choosing to show up? But I'll tell a really quick story. A friend of mine, as she was coming into her 50th birthday, she had an emotionally abusive relationship with her mother her entire life. And she said, I am finally going to set a boundary with my mom. And I'm going to tell her when we're on the phone, if she treats me disrespectfully like she always has, I'm going to hang up on her. And when I go to visit them, because they only lived a few miles away, if she's disrespectful, I'm going to walk out of her house. So the first time they get on the phone after she had set this boundary, her mother started going in at her and my friend hung up on her. The second time they got on the phone, the mother started going in on her, my friend hung up on her. The third time my friend was at their house, the mother started attacking her and my friend left. And that's all it took. The next time they were on the phone, the mother's behavior changed. The next time my friend went over to their house, the father started harping on my friend and the mother was like, Harry, shut up. She's going to leave. Right. So it's not that it's not that her mother suddenly became this awakened individual who understood that she was showing up in a way that was not okay. Her mother understood that if I want to have a relationship with my daughter, I need to change my behavior. And I think we don't believe that people we've been in relationship with for years or a lifetime would ever change their behavior. But I would bet 9.9 out of 10 times, we have never set a different example around how we expect to be treated and what we're willing to allow for in our lives. So I would start there. And then because Casey, I get the question, I would say one of the most common questions I've gotten is some version of, I'm in a really toxic relationship. What should I do? And I'm not here to tell people what to do about their relationships, but I am here to encourage them to look at, if you're viewing this relationship as toxic, why do you feel compelled to stay? Like, what is keeping you in something that you have deemed toxic? Because that's ultimately, that investigation has to start from within again. Why am I allowing X behavior in my life? Why am I allowing blank in my life? Right? That's where we have a chance to create change, is by the choices we're making and by what we choose to allow.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I know that's going to resonate huge with a lot of folks listening. So thank you. Yeah.
And I feel I do need to say, Jacob really is that nice. I was just crap earlier.
I was happy that you said I wasn't, because I'm like,
oh, shoot,
always too nice. I'm like, really? Yeah. Maybe I'm a badass.
Oh, love it. Lisa, one of the words that has always felt not quite right, in our work is calling it the work. She's working on herself, or he's working on himself, and it just makes it sound like work, right? When it doesn't really have to be. Your work, and I know the way you hold your community and space, it's around joy, and you have a lot of fun doing the work, right? It doesn't have to be really serious all the time and very staid all the time. It can be expressive and fun and full of laughter and joy. So can you talk about the way some of these lighter aspects of life that we, especially I think in the spiritual fields and contemplative practices, get neglected sometimes, and how you feel about those aspects?
Yeah, for sure. I think personal development, there have been a lot of very popular personal development models out there, the tough love weekend workshop sorts of things that a lot of people have gone to. And we don't do tough love at Joy School. It's not the approach that we use. And I know it's valuable for a lot of people. I know it's changed a lot of people. So I don't, I've been through them all. 1,000%, all of them, 100 times. But I think that a lot of people who go into personal development are used to sort of accepting a certain degree of abuse, or just being told what to do, being sort of bullied into change. So they feel familiar there and they feel comfortable there. But word gets out about what goes on, right? So I think a lot of people steer clear of anything that smells of personal development or spiritual development because they're afraid it's going to be this like really hard process. And it isn't. It's all about loving yourself better and better, as Scott has been so eloquently speaking to. It's nothing more than that. It's nothing more than coming more into the understanding of who you truly are, which is love and bliss and peace. Every one of us is here with a soul. There's nobody walking around without one. That's what our soul is. We all have that core essence. We've all accumulated blocks to expressing or experiencing ourselves as that on a regular basis. And those blocks show up as really deeply ingrained patterns and habitual thought and habitual reactivity patterning. Patterns are not known, habits are not known for being notoriously easy to break. So there is some effort. There's like some commitment required, some effort. Is it hard? Does it have to be hard? It doesn't have to be. And the ROI starts showing up so quickly that whatever initial difficulty is there, it really, propels you once you start seeing that return on investment. But yeah, it's about mastering, to a large degree, it's about mastering our thoughts. Buddhists do fasting retreats. Buddhists do silent retreats, not because eating food is bad or because talking is bad, but because they want to build the skill of feeling an impulse to do something and not doing it. So we feel an impulse to speak and we don't speak. We feel an impulse to eat and we don't eat. Joy is a self-discipline. Learning to dismiss those unproductive thoughts while still giving plenty of space and honoring to the feelings, because thoughts and feelings aren't the same, where our thoughts are majorly flawed and just the result of some program that somebody else put into us. We dismiss the thoughts, but feelings are real biochemical reactions in our body. So we want to learn to be very, very honoring and respectful of the feelings, and know how to hold them, know how to love them and to release, while not giving that much credence to the thoughts. And that's not what most of us do. So the hard is just about breaking habits. That's all that's hard about it, is we're just breaking habits.
Beautiful. That parlays into my question for Jacob perfectly, which is around discipline. So a lot of people, when it comes to creativity, share, their dreams and their vision and their hope around creativity, but they are kind of look at the mountain ahead of them, which is the completed product. And they can't, the gap between the two is so immense. And so the magic of the doing, I suppose, is how I'll describe my next question, is how, all three of you have written multiple books, and writing a book takes a lot of discipline and dedication. So can you talk about, Jacob, that the act of the doing and the framing of the doing from work to to bring to your creative process and be able to fulfill some of your visions and dreams?
I love this one so much. And, I'd like to just pay a little respect to each of us here, because I know that each of us is doing this kind of work with people, in that it's self-discovery. Who am I? Who is that intrinsic creature? Self-acceptance, which says, wow, maybe I'm not as broken as the world's been telling me or I've believed about myself. And that, to me, creates a space for transformation. And transformation simply means becoming more of who that real person is. That's my definition of it. And I have a reason for bringing that up right now, which is to say, I think a lot of people show up with ideas about the work that they would need to do on a project, whether it's a book or something, and they see the work that's involved. They also are often laden down with many beliefs about what it has to mean, what their definition of success for that thing has to be. That's one of the big jobs I do with a lot of people when they show up saying, okay, I want you to, here's the phrase I'll get a lot. I want to hire a creativity guide to kick my ass so that I will finally get my work done and write my book. And I'll go, well, you might have picked the wrong guy, but let's explore that. Because so often it really isn't about they need to be more disciplined. frequently what they're carrying around are goals or values that really aren't theirs. I have so many examples of this, but the one that comes to mind is this beautiful older lady who came to me with that same phrase, I need to write this bestseller. And when I said, you know what, just question that a moment. What do you really want from this? She says, with tears in her eyes, she said, I had 13 dogs down through my life, and each of them was a spiritual teacher for me, and each of them healed me. And I want to write this book in their honor, and I want to share it with my kids and grandkids. She said, I don't really care if it's a bestseller. She said, I feel a little guilty admitting that because I know I'm supposed to. And I said, no. What you're supposed to want is what makes you happy, what brings you joy, what brings you more aliveness. So a lot of people show up having read Stephen Pressfield's The War of Art or some of these other things. And I love those works, but there is too much focus on smashing blocks and breaking through things. And what I notice with people so much of the time is, let's take that big block. For many people, it's been there for decades. They've been trying to do something for a really long time, and they have all this history of disappointment and failure built up. And I'll go, let's walk around it. Let's ask its name. Let's ask it what it's trying to say, because it's not there. This psychological thing is not there to hurt you. It's there because we haven't paid attention to what it needs. And so often people experience the amazing breakthrough of not breaking it, but actually making it their ally. And then it gets out of the way and suddenly things get easier. In terms of actual productivity, I'll give you one tool that Jonathan Robinson, who wrote a bunch of books and was on Oprah. And I asked him one time how he got all that done. He said, I'm very lazy. I said, that does not track. You've written 14 books and you've been on Oprah multiple times. He said, no, but I make myself a promise that I'll write for 5 minutes per day. And I said, that sounds neat. That doesn't sound like enough. He said, well, it's not enough, but what it is enough because I keep that promise to myself every day. And most days I write for half an hour or 2 hours or whatever. He said, some days it's a struggle to get that 5 minutes, but I keep that promise because it's too ridiculously small not to. So I love to share with people micro choices, micro habits, things they can step into that they honestly can't not do because it's too ridiculously easy. And then they look back after 6 months and say, I thought it was going to take a lot more discipline. All I had to do was keep my own promise to myself.
That's a good one. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Scott. So a lot of times when I'm working with people who bring kind of relational challenges, a lot of times I find the first through line for them to work with is through their body. And I know you work with the breath a lot and focus on the breath a lot. Can you speak to how working with the body, the breath, and the movement sometimes is the first step in opening ourselves to our heart space?
For me, it's just about understanding that we don't get any sort of learning that there's something else to listen to but our mind, right? And our thoughts. And so when you start to dig into the work or the play or the whatever of personal development, you're likely to start realizing that there's a lot of information coming from different parts of who you are, right? And then when you couple that with the understanding that so much of what's coming from your mind is untrue, or and rooted or diffused through fear and insecurity and conditioning, you're encouraged to pay attention to some different information, right? To pay attention to your intuition, your gut feelings, to pay attention to what's happening in your heart center, which for me is always love. When I'm connecting to the energy of my heart center, it is always just love. That is the only information I ever receive when I'm in my heart. So I can trust that if that's not the information I'm receiving, I'm not in my heart. When I'm in my, what I refer to as the soul, that's what I title that place within that is just bearing witness to all of this, that's coming here to just learn and observe. When I'm in that place, all I feel is a sense of peace, a sense of okayness. Right. So knowing that, having the experience even one time, it allows me to understand, hey, wait a minute, there's a place within me that is always resonating peace, is always vibrating peace. There's a place within me that is always vibrating love. These places do not live in my mind, right? And then our bodies, You walk into a room and you shudder. There's some energy in that room that shudder is not coming from a mental knowing. It's coming from a somatic in the body knowing something's not good here. I am not vibing with this space. We start to, I think, grow in our willingness to listen to those other places. Breath work for me that's a very focused practice, the kind of breath work that I'm talking about in Guide. But what's so beautiful about that practice is the way that it moves stuck energy in our bodies. We're holding on to everything. Our bodies, our cells, it's all in there, a lifetime of trauma and anger and sadness and joy. It's all living inside of us, but we don't practice at moving it. Right? We're not practiced at all at actually releasing our anger. We're told to stifle our anger. So an entire lifetime of rage is festering in our cells and beings. And so what's fun is looking at ways that we can actually move some of this energy. For me, breathwork happens to be one of the most effective tools for that, but also dancing, right? Walks outside, whatever it is you find for yourself. And that for me is paramount, is understanding that it's not about what everyone else is doing or what everyone else is telling you should do. It's about paying attention to the tools that actually work for you, that you actually resonate with. Look, most people are going to tell you meditation is a powerful, helpful tool, and yet maybe that's not the tool for you. Maybe you really reject meditation. There's nothing wrong with rejecting it, or you reject breath work, or you reject walks in nature. Find what you're not rejecting, right? Find what is opening up something inside of you that's like, hey, this is helping me feel more peaceful, and it's bringing me more joy. And I feel like this is something I could do for 5 minutes a day, as Jacob encourages, or whatever. I don't remember what the original question was at all.
That's okay. We love the answer. I love it. No, it's so true. In my most recent microdosing immersion we did in one of my groups, I happened to just, by the way, if you're not into journaling, you don't have to journal. That brought the house down. Like they were like, thank God. Oh my God. Because I do think so many people, they think oh gosh, I have to meditate if I'm going to do this the right way, or, oh, I have to journal in this way. I'm like, you can doodle. They're like, I can doodle? I'm like, yes, that's journaling. It's just a different form. So thank you for speaking to that. Yeah, just giving yourself permission to do what's calling to you. Yeah, definitely. Lisa, my next question for you is, because you do this so beautifully, and that is one of the sticky spots I see with people run into, and it's not their fault, but I feel like we've been so deeply conditioned to be so self-focused and so individual over the last 50 years that a lot of times when it comes to spiritual development or personal development, we're so focused on ourselves. And we become this kind of energetic loop. Me. And really, when it comes to joy and gratitude, I find it's the giving it away that makes it compound in our own lives. And you do this so beautifully. I have the pleasure of knowing Lisa more personally, and I just see you constantly being a fairy, a joy fairy in other people's lives, without agenda, without asking people. You're just doing it because it's who you are, but it creates this beautiful flow and momentum of joy that builds upon itself. So it's not really cultivating joy for yourself. It's cultivating joy as a resonance, right? So can you speak to the kind of the shifting our contemplative practice, our spiritual practices, a little bit away from being so self-referential and more kind of bringing it to the world at large?
Thank you. What a beautiful question. Wow. I think that, people who discover the joy in sort of operating that way in the world know that it's more selfish than anything, right? It's like love is here. Love is like right here, all around, all of us, all the time. And when you're going to go help someone or love someone, it's not like you just like grab some love and throw it at them. You have to flow it through you, like flowing love through us onto other people. Like raises our vibration like nothing else. Like it's the most like powerfully uplifting thing ever. And even in my joy school, so often, because it's mostly online groups, and so often there'll be somebody there with something really heavy in the group. And most of the session for that particular session will be around, this person. And they'll, invariably like, oh, I took up too much time. I'm sorry. I'm like, you just allowed all of us to open our hearts wide and flow love onto you. Every person in the group is going to go approach their day in so much of a higher vibration place because we all had the opportunity to flow that through us and give that to you. You provided that opportunity for all of us here. Can you imagine if we all showed up and been like, yeah, nothing much going on with me. I'm fine. Everything's cool. Like we just have a completely non-meaningful interaction together. So like we depend on the different people in the group to have something that we can flow love onto them and support them with. And we do a lot in Joy School with what I use Eckhart Tolle terminology of the horizontal self and the vertical self. We all have both, but we're so trained up in our culture to put all of our emphasis, all of our focus on our horizontal self, our name, our occupation, our affiliations, our bodily, how we look in the world and show up in the world and what people think of us. And it's not really conducive to our joy, right? Our joy is found when we are able to build up the ability to drop back into the vertical self, the consciousness that's behind all of that. And we can kind of witness our adorable little horizontal selves. Most of our horizontal selves are toddlers. And, when we can drop into that consciousness that's behind that, we can offer love onto ourselves and to others. But it's a bit of an ego bust, right? So most of us are, we've been trained up. It's beautiful to express your individuality, be an individual, be, your unique self. And when we have so much focus on that, we lose track of the oneness that makes us all more alike than different is where the joy is. That's where the love flows easily. That's where the peace is, the contentment. It's not really about making ourselves so different and unique in the world. That can be fun too. But when there's overemphasis there, you just miss out on a lot of the joy.
Thank you. Yeah. Jacob, I'd love to ask you about mentors and, teachers and apprenticeship. I think coming off of so many hundreds of years of academic style learning of memorization. An authority says this, and we get graded on how closely we recite it back, right? Which is stifling, I think, to creativity, from the time we're just conditioned to that. And I remember when I first met you and I looked around like to who you spent time with, who you championed and worked beside. And it was some of the most inspiring, Julia Cameron, Anne Lamott, Sark, so many of the writers that I so love and admire for their talent, but also the history they bring and the experience they bring to their craft. So can you talk a little bit about, I guess, deconditioning from the programming of kind of the memorization and the roteness of like, there's only one way to do the thing, right? Mm. And opening ourselves into a more expansive sense of how to do the thing, right? Because there's many ways to do the thing. So.
Whoa, I love this one. And it really goes to the heart, I feel like, of a lot of what we're talking about today, in that I know that all four of us take a different approach when it comes to seeking to invite people into this kind of transformation, because the old model was the sage on a stage. So there's a pedestal, there's this person, and you're supposed to model your behavior to match theirs, and then you'll be worthy, then you'll be successful, then you'll be whatever it might be. And there's a fatal flaw in that, because that tells us then we are supposed to ignore who we are in favor of just becoming a facsimile of this person, somebody we admire. And I love that old Zen teacher, Basho, who said, "Seek not to follow in the footsteps of the wise, seek what they sought." And I love that there seems to be a whole new wave of teachers showing up, and everyone here is, I see you all among them, among us, who are willing to be the more transformational model, which is the guide on the side. So we're not just trying to get people to memorize facts that we told them were important and then be able to regurgitate them. We're really seeking to share from our experience, from our own struggles, and we're willing to be vulnerable so that they don't become copies of us, they become more of who they are. So I think we're really in a fascinating time in history. The educational systems, the religious systems, government systems, everything is in so much flux right now. So learning to find really good guides, but learning how to trust our own inner guidance along with that, I feel like is one of the great tasks of humanity right now. And it's leading us toward more authenticity and more freedom, I feel. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Scott, my next question for you is around love, of course. So I remember I went through, well, I've had several, but there was one in particular, breakup that just took me down, and I remember coming through that and healing through that was so transformational in that at some point in that process of healing, I realized that love was something that lived within me. It did not live outside of myself. And hopefully all of us, alive will come to that felt understanding at some point in our life. Our love is ever giving, and we choose, we discern where to place it, who to place it upon, what to place it. So for me, my relationships have never been the same after having that new awareness. So can you talk about your own sense of what love is, and how you came to that understanding?
Sure, I can and will, but I would love to know, how did you come to that awareness in that breakup? Like, what shifted inside of you where you suddenly realized that?
I think it was allowing myself to fully let my heart crack open completely. And I realized that on the other side of, the other side of the coin of extreme love is the capacity for extreme grief. And only if one allows oneself to go to the depths of grief can someone also have the other side, which is great compassion and great love. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. I love that. I'm sorry you went through such a hard time, of course, but that's a great nugget to come out of it with. I just experience love as energy. That's my experience of love. So that's my definition of it. And because I see it as energy, I see it, and as everything is energy, I feel that there's love that's alive within us. It's alive outside of us. And so it's within our power to choose to play with that energy or not. And whenever I'm playing with it, and when I speak about love, I'm thinking of compassion, kindness, forgiveness, empathy. That's all under the umbrella. It's all fueled by the energy of love in our lives. So what I've noticed, and this is a total selfishness, I feel better when I'm loving. And I want to feel good as often as possible in a reality where it's not always easy to feel good. There are plenty of things that pull us away. And that's not the only thing we're supposed to experience here is good feeling. At the same time, I think one of the most innate human desires is to feel good. So when I check in with myself and when I'm aligned with love, I'm always feeling better, which is what drives me to connect with that energy more often. So, and drives me to ask the question, when I feel myself like flailing, what is love inviting me to do in this moment? How is love asking me to show up in this moment for myself or for others or for the planet or for the world? Like, what is the invitation that's coming from that energy? And if I not only ask the question, but allow myself to respond to it and then follow up that response with some sort of action, I'm likely to have nudged myself into a better place of being. And then also, Casey, recognizing that part of our human experience here is not being loving. Like one of the ways I've come to a more peaceful place with myself is being really kind to myself when I'm not able to show up exactly how I would like to. When I fall off the love train and I'm lost for a moment in my anger or in my judgment or in my jealousy or in my envy or whatever other things we get lost in, can I still remind myself that I am still beautiful, I'm still worthy, I'm still whole, despite my inability in this moment to rest in love, I am still human, and it's okay. And then if we can do that for ourselves, we are so much more likely to do it for others in our lives. That's the thing about this kind of selfishness, the selfishness of self-love and personal development. It always transcends self. Love is a wild, big, abundant energy, and it's never just about one thing. If you are loving others, you're loving yourself. If you're loving yourself, you're loving others. That is the nature of love as I see it.
Beautifully said. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. So my final question is kind of for all of you. I'd love to hear all of your reflections on. So when it comes down to it, when I think about like, why do I do the work I'm doing? It's, which I like to remind myself once in a while, is really for the future, right? It's to create, hopefully a better, more easeful, peaceful future, for the next generations. And I see, so many people see the epidemic and the problems that the youngest generations are having. But when I look at it from a different angle, is they're pushing back. I think a lot of the problems we're saying that we see with our youth are actually them resisting. They're like pushing back into creative living. They're pushing back like out of these boxes and these conditionings. They're loving more fully in their expression. And so I think it's just as inspiring as anything else. So do you have any advice or reflections for teachers, parents, people working with children, supporting children, of how we can support them in bringing more joy, more love, and more creativity back to their young lives?
I'll start. So I happen to know that Lisa and I each have adult children who have gone through some version of transition or non-binary. I love watching my two adult children who are going through that and being so curious about it. It's like, I feel like we are in this time during which so many of the structures that used to define what being an adult looked like, or what being successful, or any of these things, what being a man or woman looked like. I feel like those things are in so much flux. And I have told my kids that I got the really great gift of breaking about the time they were coming of age. And so I felt like I was required to grow up back up alongside them, which meant that I didn't have a fixed idea of how they should turn out. And I would like to say it was because I was so enlightened and all that. The truth is I didn't know. And the fact that they're survived me and they're adults and they're driving cars and things and actually living on their own, it's amazing to me. But I say that with a lot of humility, and I mean it. And I feel like that's the stance to take right now. It goes back to all the wisdom traditions, go back to becoming a beginner, go back to having the beginner's mind, the mind of a child, which to me means viewing the world with curiosity and wonder and saying, oh my God, I don't know what all these things mean. So show me, Yeah,
I think that kids, every generation comes in better. There's just an innate evolution that kids are just kinder to one another in general. My kids, groups in the school, I was always active in the school, and it was a kinder environment in the school than it was when I was a kid, which isn't to say it's perfect yet, but I do think that they just come in better and they have opportunity to be exposed to more evolved ideas than we used to have. And I think that I work with families also, as I have a transgender daughter, and I'm a PFLAG president. So I work with families that were really struggling with their transgender children and non-binary children. And I think it's first, we have to just recognize that these are adults, parents, teachers, politicians, whatever they are doing love the way they know to do it. Follow the rules. If you don't play it safe, your life is going to be screwed up. So I'm going to love you by imposing these legacy ways of thinking, these old school values onto you, because this is how I protect you. And I think that the more enlightened parents, the parents who have maybe been around the spiritual block a little bit or just came in with a little bit more capacity, understand that the way to usher in this new humanity that's right there ready to come in is to parent, to teach, to guide with nothing but expectant curiosity and just beautiful, like, let's see what's unfolding in you. This is going to be so exciting. What is unfolding in you, without trying to get in there and manipulate it at all. And that's so hard for most people because we are, primarily a fear-led society more than the opposite at this point. And fear wants to protect kids by maintaining sameness and conformity. And it's just doing our own work and encouraging others to do that work will create that future that you're glimpsing and speaking of. I believe we're just, it's right around the corner, and we just have to maybe get really, really messy before we rise up into it.
Yeah. I don't have much to say beyond what they said, which is beautiful. And you both said curiosity, which is the word that comes up for me around this, and just loving people for who they are, where they are, and understanding that is the greatest support that we're able to offer them. And love like that doesn't require them to change, doesn't require them to think or do in any specific way. It simply holds space for them to come into themselves, however that journey unfolds. And if you can give yourself the same curiosity, you're going to find that you might make yourself available to changes in your own life that you never imagined possible because you chose not to limit them.
Thank you, all of you. So beautiful.
Oh. Thank you, Casey.
Mm-hmm. So in closing, I would love for y'all to share how folks can find you. And if you have anything coming up that you would love people to know about. Scott, let's start with you.
Yeah, you can find me in the usual places like Instagram, Facebook, scottstabile.com. And I have a newsletter through Substack if you want new writings. I'm doing a lot of video teachings on there now, and that's scottstabile.substack.com. And yeah. And I don't know what I'll be offering by the time this comes out, but if you find me on there, I'm sure I'll be announcing it.
We relate. Thank you. Jacob, how about you?
I want to give us a plug for Scott. And if any of you goes to his site and notices he does a breathwork session, please do that because it'll change your life. All right. Nordby.com is probably the easiest way for a lot of people. Those who are writers, by the time this comes out, we'll have our fall retreat in Los Angeles announced. So we'll make sure and have a link for that, but it's awritingroom.com.
Beautiful. And that's the retreat with Anne Lamott.
Yes, and some other names I'm not quite yet at liberty to disclose, but they are exciting.
Ooh, fun. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Lisa, how about you?
Yes, ditto on if you get a chance to do breath work with Scott or just subscribe to his Substack and just swoon at the word poetry that comes out of this beautiful man. And I was at the last writing retreat that Jacob did. I was helping him out there. It was absolutely beautiful experience. So please do that. I'm LisaMcCourt.com is where all of my stuff would be. I'm a social media dinosaur, so the only thing that I actually pay attention to is my personal Facebook page, Lisa McCourt Author, but you're welcome to join me there. I have other things, I just don't pay attention to them. And yeah, we have an ongoing Joy School that's always taking enrollment for the groups, and from time to time there's 3 months in intensives where I work personally with people as well as admit them into the groups. So,
Lisa, did I just see that you got Neil Donald Walsh on your program coming up? Yeah, you haven't. I gave Scott a plug, but I just want to say you are doing an amazing job of gathering people around you. Amazing.
Aw, he was sweet. He was really sweet. Thank you. Oh yeah, I have a podcast too.
Oh yeah.
Yes. And what's the name of the podcast, Lisa? Please remind us.
Joy, the Vibration Elevation podcast.
Mm.
And all of y'all have been my honored guests, and hopefully we will be again on the podcast. It's awesome. It's so much fun.
Well, Casey, I love how you've been highlighting and talking to each of us. And I just want to say I love the work you are doing and the community you're creating. I love the integration. I love the way you help people understand how to take these things and not just have these big experiences, but to actually make them part of their life. So thank you. I feel so honored to be here today. Thank you.
Aho. Yeah.
Back at you all. Thank you so, so much. And thank you all for coming together and being together today. So please follow all of these beautiful people, and we'll look forward to seeing you back in a couple weeks. All right.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Love you all. All right.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Microdosing for Healing podcast. Are you ready to take the next step? Please visit us at microdosingforhealing.com to access our free Microdosing 101 workshop. In it, you'll learn more about our diverse community, our supportive group programs, and discover if earth medicine practice might be right for you. See you in the next episode.